really excited. I've been waiting for this day for a long time for Kunja BIhari Prabhu to come and speak.
Yeah.
So really excited.
He was one of those shy ones that, you had to go out with the fishing net quite a few times before you catch your fish. But when you catch the fish, it's like the biggest smile comes on your face, and Gurudev's extra happy. No pressure, Prabhu, no pressure. So, our first speaker I'm going to introduce now. He first met the devotees in Quebec. For those of you who are geographically challenged, that's on the east coast of Canada, the French part of Canada, in 1985. I suspect there are one or two people here that weren't even born in 1985. And he joined ISKCON in the following year, 86. And he met my beloved, or our beloved Gurudev, same year as I did in 96. And I didn't know, Prabhu, you took Diksha in Kartik 96. So were we in the same, I was on the last day of Kartik, were you too?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. We were in the same cemetery. Wow. So what's that make us? That makes us like not just god brothers, but twins or something, right? So, Sriman Kunja BIhari Prabhu, I'm so happy and grateful that you've given up some of your morning program to share with us your memories and Pushpanjali for Srila Gurudev. Big love. Haribol, Prabhu.
Haribol. Thank you so much. And Dandavat pranams. And okay, I'd like to congratulate you first of all, because of your coming forward in such soft, sweet way and reaching out and being able to take me out of my loneliness and bringing back the spark of the desire to associate with devotees and the desire to serve. In the Mandirya Kadambini, it's described the process of bhakti. And in Bhajana Kriya, there is Ganatarala, sometimes thick, sometimes thin. So I've been in a very thin period. And that's why I asked, I needed a bit of time to be able to come forward. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayani Tinamni Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangam Gaiti Girim Yatkripattamaham Bande Shikurum Dinataranam. Now that verse is for real, because I'm begging for the mercy of Gurudev and the mercy of all Vaishnavas that something of value come through this mouth. It's hard to know where to begin. But I'd like to say something about when I came to ISKCON. The feeling was there that we had missed the pure devotee, and that Srila Prabhupada, we were reading the Rasamrita and all the incredible, exciting stories about Prabhupada and the devotees who had met Prabhupada. And I had I went blank. Anyways, I'll just jump to the fact that I was hoping to one day be able to get some kind of deep association, but I thought it was impossible. And I was traveling in Brazil with one sannyasi who had participated in the Padayatra in India. And he had spent a lot of time with Srila Gaudiya Maharaj. And so after 2 years of being in Brazil, I went to India, and I was with this sannyasi. I joined him. He was living in Ambika Kalna, and he took me to different places. And one of the places he took me was in Bhubaneswar. And Srila Gaudiya Maharaj, he wasn't there at the time, but I met, there was one devotee who spoke. Like, I was a really new devotee. I didn't understand anything. Yesterday, I heard a class of Srila Gurudeva explaining how we cannot actually hear anything. Our mind is not allowed new devotees, just, but somehow some purification is going on. And he had said something that to this day, it's like, I'm trying to remember, could he have actually have said that? That like in the core of night, he was like, Gaura Govinda Maharaj would be dressed as a gopi. And I didn't know if he was saying that this was what Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj had told them, or what he was envisioning, or his visions. It was something that struck me very deeply. Anyways, I was an ISKCON devotee, and there was no real question of being able to take shelter of Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj. I was initiated by an ISKCON guru. But by some great fortune in Paris, Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj would often come. So we would hear some amazing Harikatha, and I was always a little fearful of Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj because he was like the real deal. But I took the courage one day and I asked him, what would it take for you to come to Brazil? Because I really love Brazil, and I had the deep desire to bring a pure devotee to Brazil. And he said, "Oh, if you invite me, I will come." And so I went to Brazil, and I was thinking, okay, we got to invite Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj. And I went to the president where I was there, and I started beginning. And just a few days later, the news had come that Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj had left this planet. And I was really devastated. And while returning back to Paris, I was living in Paris at the time, I was just wondering, what are the disciples of Gaura Govinda Maharaj going to do? Because they were always saying, you have to hear from the lips of the pure devotee. And just when I arrived, I went home and I went straight to the temple. And then a van full of devotees were just coming from Holland. And they were saying, we're going to England. Come on, we're going to go see Narayana Maharaj. I said, Narayana Maharaj. He said, because there was things going around being said about Narayana Maharaj. And then I had a few friends who were saying, well, Navadvi Prabhu says he's fantastic. I'm going. He said, really? Oh, you're going? Okay, I'm going. And we're leaving in half an hour. I just ran home, got my stuff together, and jumped in a van. And off we were to England. And I think the very first time we met, it was in Bath. I think in Budara, Prabhu's house. And I actually remember, I have very poor memory, but I actually remember that Gurudeva had a devotee speak, and he said something to the effect that if you're going to practice something, you have to know the goal you want to obtain. And I had never heard that. So you have to establish your sadhya before you adopt your sadhana. So it was just 2 days because I had to go back to Paris. And so I was able to get, and I was just blown away by Gurudeva. I don't know how I went back to Paris. I hitchhiked. I don't know how I made it because I had an engagement. But the very next weekend, one devotee who had been searching for a guru in India and went to all the ISKCON devotees, met Shashikala, who told him about Srila Narayana Maharaj, and he was looking for him. And none of the contacts had ever come through. Anyways, he needed a translator, and I said, yes, I will go with you. And we went again to England. And he had a darshan with Gurudeva, and he needed a translator. So I was able to come in and translate for him. And Gurudeva just touched his heart so deeply. And he started crying like a baby. And then he slipped away, and he was done. And here I was alone with Gurudeva. And I felt the gravity of that moment. And then Gurudev's eyes shifting and reading my soul. And then he used the language that I had never heard him use, afterwards, but I was really into energy, and Gurudev say, "Oh, get your energy from the holy name, and read Prabhupada's books." He told me things that just lifted me off the ground, and I left the room just floating, and I was like, whoa, lit up. And when I went back to Paris, like, woo, when Damodarati saw me, whoa, she's right away, she was friends with Brajanath and Vrindadidi, and she says, "Oh, I want you to take shelter." Right away. And then when Gurudev, he went to the America, and you were on that tour in America. And then on the way back, he came back to Holland. So we went to Holland again to hear. And then in Holland, Gurudev, he gave initiations there to Damodarati. And then he came to me and he said, "Oh, with this half, I'm taking this half." And he invited us to go to India, and which was something, oh, we already had tickets to go to Brazil, and how are we going to make it to India? And then it's like, but he invited us to go to India. We got to go to India. And then, okay. And then, so I was selling stuff that I brought from India. And then miracles started happening. And Lakshman just, I was selling stuff. He said, "What? That is way too cheap. I'll give you double what you're asking." And anyways, it was just ecstatic. We were able to come to that parikram in 1996. And I remember you said something about having a parrot in your room, just so that on the Prabhu. Well, I had a hotel room, and there were pigeons in our room. So it was like insane. It was so intense, so many devotees. My next door neighbor was Urukram Prabhu, now Padmanabha Maharaj. So being with Gurudev meant just being with so many extraordinary personalities. And I got to hear a lot about Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And it was just absolutely transformative. And after that, the Kartik went back to Brazil. And we were just moving to Brazil, and I built a house, and I just felt so empty. We're building a house in Brazil. This is insane. We could be with a pure devotee. And so on the next Kartik, I decided that, hey, there was no restrictions in like nobody can go on tour. You have to stay and do your seva. So, oh, I forgot to say, I wanted to say one little story, that when I was sitting in Paris at the temple, and the GBC had come and saying that, oh, you should not go here from Srila Narayana Maharaj because of this, that, this, and that. And then we had to backtrack, because just a few weeks before, I was in the association of Srila Gurudev, and I was there in a room, and then Gurudev, he had just gotten off the phone with Shamarani Tidi, and he told her, he spoke very heavily to her, like very grave, very serious, hung up, and then he laughed. He says, "Oh, I just gave her long distance injection." And sometime later, I was in the car with Shamarani and Gyanadas Prabhu, Nemi Maharaj, and they were saying such a wonderful katha, and how, how Gyanadas Prabhu felt that, like his whole bhakti, like had, as if the rug had been pulled under his feet, and how, it was all abhas. His practices were in abhas, and he was saying this in a very moving, deep way. And I had hardly ever had any sangha with Prabhupada disciples, so it was very ecstatic hearing these senior devotees speaking. And Jayashri, she mentioned in her talk about being at the right place at the right time, just being there. So somehow I was at one point in time, I was standing there, and Gyanadas Prabhu, Maharaja, was leaning over and speaking to Gurudeva, who was in his car leaving. And he was just like half crying, half ecstatic, smiling and thanking profusely Gurudeva, and how he was seeing Prabhupada in him, and how he was giving new life to his devotion. So fast forward back to Paris, when he say, the Gurudev is against Prabhupada, and it's just didn't make any sense whatsoever. So it was a no-brainer for me that, I'm going to go see. They're saying we should not go, and say, I'm going to go and I'm going to bring this paper and I'm going to ask questions about, all these accusations they're doing against Gurudev. And it was wonderful, because then all these answers were coming, and it forced me into a position where I had to, I just had to write and thanking my first guru, thanking for everything he had done, but that if I was going to be banned for going to hear from a pure devotee who you're saying is speaking against Prabhupada, I had never heard such wonderful glorification before about Srila Prabhupada. So then I would have to go. And today I thank ISKCON for everything, all the great things, and which has allowed me to come into the association of Srila Gauragovinda Maharaj and Srila Gurudeva, and to take up the process of bhakti, all the very thin. Oh, and what I wanted to say, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking about myself, and you can cut me off, and you can whack cartels if I go offline. I want to just mention that my desire to how Gurudev came to Brazil, because I really, Srila Prabhupada was refused a visa when he was in Caracas in Venezuela. But Madhvaiti Swami Maharaj told me this, that they were trying to bring Prabhupada to Brazil, and it didn't happen. And it didn't happen with Srila Gauragovinda Maharaj when he left what I felt was prematurely this world. And so, like, I somehow it really dawned on me that, oh, Gurudev has to come to Brazil. And I wanted to reciprocate, because I had joined ISKCON there, and I really wanted Gurudev should go there. And so then on that 97, the Kartik 97, I joined the tour, and I went to Australia, and I went to Bali, and it was just so ecstatic hearing the Harikatha, and Gurudev making the point that we should not be lazy in learning Siddhanta. So I claim guilty. I have been very lazy, and that's why I have had such a hard time in speaking, because I know that I'm supposed to know the philosophy much deeper, and so I'm embarrassed to speak and just show my lack of any kind of proper knowledge and the knowledge of verses. So while we were in Navadvip, I visited ISKCON, and I met one devotee who told me, oh, we want to translate one of Gurudev's books into Portuguese. I said, do you think your guru would mind? I said, well, why don't you come and ask him? And so he went back, and he actually got permission. And when I finally made it back to Brazil after that tour, and I arrived there, I phoned him, and he said, finally. And so he was a one-man show. He translated, did all the diacritics. And in the 2 months that I was there in Brazil, like on Janmashtami, we printed the first book, The Nectar of Govinda Lila. And then he was saying, before you leave, we should put out. He says, yes, let's put out another book. He said, no, let's put out 2 more books. And on Radhastami day, we had two more books. And I was leaving Brazil the very next day. So on Radhastami, we distributed a bunch of books. And then I left and I came back to Europe. And our life then was like being with Gurudev, traveling with Gurudev, and then somehow getting the rupees to be able to go on the next tour. And when we were on tour, like we go to Australia and then we go to the next country, and people would be there. They would just have their hearts stolen. You know, Gurudev would always say, "I have a big pocket and I'm taking your hearts," and people would just appear and say, "What are you doing here?" And they had just dropped everything and gone on tour. So yeah, we invited Gurudev to come, and then Gurudev just started making all the arrangements where he sent Ban Maharaj and Ashram Maharaj and Ramesh Prabhu came up with a lot of Lakshmi and donations to help. And it happened that Gurudev came to Brazil, and when he came to Brazil, all kinds of really far out personalities came on that first tour, like the wives, ministers, and these scientists that worked with a very famous healer who would channel entities and who would like give them knowledge on how to build healing machines, and they had like crystal machines, and one of them they when Gurudev arrived, they presented a computer and they asked Gurudev, "Can you put your hands on this?" And then Gurudev placed his hand on the computer and zoom, and the screen went green, and he said, "Wow, he's a healer." And yeah, it was really exciting times. Koti, what's the name of the Prabhupada disciple? Gurudev said, "I am here for you." So it was very, very ecstatic times. And Gurudev came back many times. He came, and one of the points that I did want to say, that in one of the classes in Brazil, and this may be helpful to some devotees, like Gurudev had said, there was one devotee, he wanted to go to India, but he didn't know what to do. He was a very simple devotee. So he said, "Well, I should go to the airport." And on the way to the airport, he was walking and a car stopped. And he says, "Where are you going?" "Oh, I want to go to India. I'm going to the airport." "Oh, and you have your passport and visa?" He said, "Oh." He didn't know anything, the basics. And so this driver helped him. And so the point being that if one has the desire to be in association, then Krishna makes all the arrangements. And I've experienced that in so many different ways, just by, like, the idea was just like, I'm going to India, and all, those who were on tour were like that. We didn't know how, but we were just going, and somehow we'd get the intelligence, and things would happen magically. Like once I was in Europe, and we were waiting for Gurudev to come, and I had went to different places, and I had experience, and I felt the calling that I should go to America. Gurudev was touring America for 1 month before, and I'm waiting 1 month for Gurudev, and I said, "What am I doing here?" And then I met a devotee. I met a person who owed money to someone who owed me 1,000 euros. I said, and I thought I was never going to see that money. And he said, "Oh, listen, why don't I just give it to you?" And then I said, "Oh, okay." And then so the very next day, I was able to purchase a ticket and join the tour in America. And I also wanted to mention, like, I'm jumping this and that to different opportunities. We went to Badger in 1998, and this was before Gurudev had come to Brazil. And it was just so incredibly beautiful. And I really liked watching the devotees approaching Gurudev. And I had the good fortune of associating with Uncle Puru, with Puru Prabhu. He was just like a big teddy bear and such a really sweet-hearted Prabhupada disciple. And seeing his like blossoming and blooming was just so beautiful in the association of Gurudev. And when we went to Brazil, we stopped in New York, and he hosted us in his home. And I asked for blessings, that we wanted to start the mission of Gurudev in Brazil somehow. And he gave us, he had the museum of Prabhupada's, he had all kinds of things. And he actually gave us a watch that Srila Prabhupada has, like the first digital watch, a gold, and there's a picture of Prabhupada wearing that watch, and with the sheet, and with the official sheet, this is the official. So we have that watch somewhere in some box we've moved too many times. I don't know exactly where it is. Okay. Oh, I wanted to say something. I wanted to say one verse. Anyabilasita sunyam jnana karmadhyanavitam anukulena krishna anu shilanam bhaktir uttama. So just to know that the definition of pure Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion. So we have the Tatashta Lakshan, the explanation of the boundaries of what is not devotion. So Anyabilasita Shunyam, so devoid of Shunyam, devoid of selfish or motivated desires. Jnana Karmadhyanavitam, which is not eclipsed by reward-seeking activity or knowledge-seeking impersonal liberation. Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Uttama. So that pure devotion is that service done, the perpetual service done for the pleasure of Sri Krishna. I thought I'd slip that in. Learn one verse. Okay, there's nothing that comes to mind now, except that, I remember one time, I was just like sick of myself. This was in Bali. I was just sick of myself. And I went to Gurudev, please. And then Gurudev, I don't know where it came from, but he just went whack like this. He hit me in the heart. And so right now I'm just feeling that the service you're doing is just so valuable in my life. It's bring me back to life again. And I'm feeling that I hope it doesn't have to come through a bamboo rod, but I'm begging that I may once again be engaged in seva, and that all my wicked desires just be washed away from my heart somehow, and that I may be able to bathe in sadhu sangha, in very high class sadhu sangha. Panchakalpa Tirivasya Kipasinu Vyayavacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's so beautiful. As you were talking, many things came to mind actually. And one of the things that came to mind about when you were talking about our seva was that actually Gurudev's created this most beautiful garden. And in this garden, there are so many trees and flowers and so many beautiful kunjas. And it's so variegated. And our job as sevaks is to go and water every part of that garden to find where there are some dry spots, where the soil needs to be changed, whatever, repotting. And when we do that for others, we do it for ourselves. When we serve others, we serve ourselves.
Gurudev, he would always say that. He said, I've come to water the kripa. He said, so dry. And I remember in ISKCON, one very nice French-Canadian devotee, Ghosh Thakur Prabhu, he had said that his Sangha with Prabhupada had been one day when Prabhupada was in Montreal. He was sitting in a room and he had to go through that room and he stopped and he looked at Prabhupada, and Prabhupada like looked at him, and he just, that moment, he just felt seen by Prabhupada. And the fact that he was seen, that the pure devotee knows I exist, that there is total hope for me, nourished him all these years. This one moment of Sangha with a pure lava matra sadhu sangi sarvasiddhi, all perfection comes from a lava matra, no? Just
philosophically,
a fraction of a second.
That totally makes sense, because we're walking around and everybody's seeing this illusion, and I'm relating to myself in an illusory way. So if a pure devotee sees me, he's actually seeing me, my swarup, rather than this nonsense me. So that's exactly right. And I was really there in your Gaur Govinda Maharaj story in Brazil. Although I knew it ended up happily ever after, I was quite distressing to hear about your endeavors in Brazil and then Gaur Govinda Maharaj leaving his body. It's so beautiful the way it turned out perfectly, because you brought Narayana there. And you also made the point, you were sort of saying, well, you sort of meant that you're not, you don't think you're philosophically erudite and you can't quote this and that and the other. But actually, you brought up two of the most important philosophical points about Srila Gurudev. And your Pushpanjali was a beautiful combination of personal experience, where we could feel you were there, and at the same time sharing Gurudev's tattva and his ras and his mission and his vani. And the two most important things that you emphasized were that Gurudev came to give us the goal of bhakti, the sadhya before the sadhana, and that he also was the most exemplary at glorifying Srila Prabhupada. Those two things. And when Brajanath shared his Pushpanjali, he said that one of the, I think, three things that Gurudev said, I'm coming to the West for, is to go to every holy tirtha that Prabhupada went to and to honor those places. So if we have those two things in mind, that Gurudev and Prabhupada are different and non-different, and that Gurudev totally came as a as a team member with Prabhupada, and he came to reveal not what Prabhupada hadn't revealed, but that which we hadn't, or the Prabhupada disciples in particular, hadn't put an emphasis on. So Prabhupada actually had revealed everything. It's just that the emphasis for those disciples was not on the things that Gurudev was putting the emphasis on, because of all the things that had to get done to build an organization ground up. So this union between Prabhupada and Gurudev is so essential. And this whole idea, and you quoted the verse Anya Blasta Sunyam, which Gurudev did he got the sannyasis to quote that verse time and time again. It's so essential, because what is the point of doing all this sadhana if we don't know where we're going? So you brought out the two most essential points.
And Gurudev, he opened the treasure chest.
Yeah, he not only opened it, he poured it on our heads.
And I remembered something that I wanted to tell. I wanted to tell that once when we were in Jagannath Puri, Gurudev had told us that we should meet at the Gaudiya Mat next to Jagannath temple. And we were staying, because there were so many devotees, we were staying outside in a hotel room. And then the order had come later that it was going to be at another time, that it was not to go, but we didn't know. So it ended up to just a handful of devotees were there with Gurudev, and Gurudev was speaking with the Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur disciple, and they were sitting beside each other and like chit-chatting and saying very beautiful things, and Madhav Maharaj was translating, and Gurudev was saying like, oh, my English is broken and I know nothing. He says, oh, you have received the mercy of your Gurudev and Parampara, and you're preaching all over the world. And they were having this chit chat in Bengali or Hindi, I don't know. And then at one point, then Gurudev became very serious, and he turned to us and he said in English, and he said, as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has come to reestablish the full bhakti, I have come so that this line may not be lost, to reestablish. So it was like very, very deep impression.
So can you say again what he said? What Gurudev said?
He said, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur has come to reestablish, because there were so many deviations and so many upper sampradayas were popping up left and right, misrepresenting the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur came to reestablish the line of pure bhakti. So in the same way, Srila Gurudev was coming to re-establish the line of bhakti in the world. And another story I remember that I wanted to say, that in that same year, when we were doing parikram, and one day during the day, like the space cadet happened to be standing at the door, and there was Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Maharaj. And this is one of like the only associations that I had with him. And there was the little sign, you know, please don't touch my feet. And he was speaking to 3 or 4 devotees. They looked like students, you know, coming from the outside. And they were speaking in Bengali and very loudly. And then at one point, I was just standing at the door outside. And at one point, he just finished in perfect English. And he said, and we should always chant Hare Krishna. And looking at me. And then when he said we should always chant Hare Krishna, and then they screamed Hare Krishna, and again, and he was looking at me and he says Hare Krishna, and they Hare Krishna, like 3 times, and I felt like a cannon, like whoa, it almost threw me off coming into my heart. It was very ecstatic. I'm like, Gurudev, he gave us everything and everyone. He gave us the teachings, and he gave us the opportunity to associate with so many, like with devotees in India. And I want to say I so much appreciated the devotees of India who have given Harikatha on this platform. Very, very touching.
Beautiful, Prabhu. Thank you so much. And I hope you can stay for the rest of the program. I'm going to hand over to my dear god sister, Yeshadari Didi in London, who is right there, ready to introduce the rest of the speakers today. Thank you. You are testament to the shy ones are the best ones. Worth continuing fishing for. Hari Bol, Dandavat.
Hari Bol. Thank you.
Firstly, I just want to say to Kunja Prabhu, thank you so much. It's been a long time coming, and I'm just really grateful that you shared a piece of your heart, and so beautifully and elegantly. And I can't describe what you said. It's like when you're hearing these pastimes of Srila Gurudev, you feel like you're there. You feel like you're watching from an outside and you're watching the scene. I'm very visual when it comes to certain things, and you described it in such a way that I felt like I was there watching you and Srila Gurudev and having these, and you and Srila Guru Govinda Maharaj. It's just absolutely beautiful. And I'm just really grateful that you shared a piece of your heart with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing out this shy one. You were very eloquent in speaking to me, and I'll always remember that.
Keep me in your prayers, then I'll be all right.
Hari Bol. Gurudev's blessing.